It's 9 o'clock in the morning, and Malibu Beach is quite busy. The lifeguard team consists of 4 people: Heather, Pete, Doug, and Barb. Heather and Pete are an ex-couple and haven't been able to work well together since their breakup. Heather blames her ex for never committing seriously, while he resents her for quickly finding a new partner. To make matters worse, construction work has caused various problems in part of the beach, and the person in charge of the construction is none other than Heather's new boyfriend. After responding to a complaint over the phone, Doug informs that the workers have blocked part of the parking area. Pete seizes the opportunity to go there and confront his rival, leaving the next patrol to Barb. On the radio, the news reports that a minor earthquake occurred 3 hours earlier, but nobody pays attention to the news. Everyone continues to enjoy the sun, unaware that the tremor has released several sharks of an unknown species. Not far from the beach, a solitary diver is the first victim of this new predator. At the same time, Heather calls her boyfriend, Colin, to inform him that her ex is on his way to the construction site. Pete cuts through the water and passes by another diver, who appears a little worried. He says something very fast just past near him. The lifeguard responds that he will keep an eye out and simply moves on while the other one dives again. On the sand, Doug and Barb are dealing with a young offender named Jenny. Wanting to get out of community service, she asks someone to break the rules and sign her report. They both refuse, and Barb responds that working is not the end of the world, but the girl interrupts the sermon to enjoy her favorite music. While Doug laments this portrait of the future, one of the sharks silently attacks the diver, who doesn't even have time to ask for help. Then we meet Barb's boyfriend, Brian. He says he is going to Lost and found to drop off a ring he found by chance. Barb is enchanted by the beauty of the jewelry, and he suggests that she try it on. Only then does she understand the joke and realizes she is being proposed to. Very happy, they plan to set the ceremony for after they finish college. Seeing the couple kiss during work hours, Heather begins to reprimand them but softens when she learns they are engaged and even lets Barb take a break to celebrate with Brian. For now, no one has noticed the presence of danger or even the absence of the 2 divers. A group of young people moves a bit away from the shore on a speedboat, piquing the sharks' interest. Meanwhile, Doug is assembling a rifle that he plans to take on a hunting trip with friends soon. Impressed with the weapon, Jenny tries to invite herself along, but Doug quickly clarifies that only guys are going. With a sigh of disappointment, she finally decides to start her work and asks the guy for help with her zipper, taking the opportunity to flirt. When Doug asks if she is always this forward, she says she only does this when she wants something and admits it doesn't always work. A few minutes later, Jenny returns asking if she can take a break. Unwilling to accept her boldness, Doug tells her she wouldn't be going through this if she had obeyed the law. Jenny begins to justify herself, explaining that she stole from a store that had insurance, and the item was worth less than $20. The more she speaks, the more Doug is convinced that she has no hope. In northern Malibu, Pete is telling Colin that he cannot block the public parking area. Colin responds that it's a temporary precaution and accuses Pete of coming just to fight because he is jealous of his ex. Pete insists that he is just doing his job and tells Colin to keep Heather out of it. At that moment, Heather is patrolling near the speedboat where the young people are relaxing. 2 boys are alternating between flying and diving while the shark swims quickly in that direction. Coming out of the water, one of them notices that the other is no longer moving. He looks down and starts screaming when he sees that half of his friend is already gone. To his despair, the wind muffles his voice, and nobody hears him. The only one to notice something strange is Heather, especially as she gets splashed with dirty water when passing beneath them. When her boat shakes violently, she begins to understand the danger, but she is still too far from the boy to help him. He panics when he sees that nobody is interrupting the descent, and it is too late when Heather reaches him. Her boat is hit again, and she ends up falling into the water, surrounded by fins. Pete and Colin are still fighting when the radio programming is interrupted by a tsunami alert. All beaches in the area must be evacuated immediately. Running for the jet ski, Pete tells Doug to start getting people off the beach and explains what is happening. After informing Jenny, the guy runs to the tower and triggers the emergency alarm, abruptly cutting off Barb and Brian's mood. The sharks are still circling Heather when Pete rushes by and offers her a saving ride. The beachgoers panic when Barb grabs a megaphone and shouts for everyone to leave the beach immediately. Colin is also clearing the work area. A worker named George seems to doubt the seriousness of the alert, saying it's always exaggerated. The other two, Yancey and Carl, hurry to protect their work from the water. Colin takes the alert seriously but refuses to leave the site, insisting he doesn't want to abandon his equipment. When Yancey and Carl move away, George suggests this is an excuse to protect Heather and calls the boss crazy. In the parking lot, Doug tells Jenny to get in the car and get out of there as quickly as possible. But even she gives in to a sense of responsibility and ends up helping some kids find their parents. Doug gets annoyed with the delay and earns a kiss for his concern. On the jet ski, Heather pleads with Pete to go faster. They need to escape not only from the sharks but also from the huge wave that is already very close. Colin watches the duo through binoculars when the three employees return and announce that the road is congested. Also watching from the parking lot, Doug and Barb are alarmed to see the jet ski collide with a shark, throwing Pete and Heather off. Doug runs to grab the rifle, and everyone ends up following him, disobeying their own orders not to return to the beach. Pete and Heather are just getting out of the water when the shark is hit and ends up on the sand, wounded. Pete tells Doug to finish the job, but Barb stops him. This is a goblin shark, which should have been extinct a long time ago. She asks that the animal be spared, but Pete gives the order, and Doug shoots. Now the wave is too close and much larger, and the tower cabin is the only place they will be able to reach in time. They rush to close everything and do what they can to seal the cracks, but their efforts are in vain. The wave invades the cabin and floods everything mercilessly. In a few minutes, the water covers most of Los Angeles. A TV journalist reports that the tsunami was even worse than the one in Indonesia, and the wave was about 30 meters high. Brian nearly drowns, and Jenny injures her leg, attracting the goblin shark's sense of smell, which are now swimming close to the tower. Colin's construction is the only other structure that remains above water. Through the window, Pete sees the extent of the damage outside and says there is no way to get Jenny to a hospital anytime soon. Then Heather has to stitch up the cut right there, doing her best to ignore the rude patient, who continues to demand a doctor. The 4 occupants of the construction site also survived, and Carl is excited to discover that the power is working. That joy fades when disaster news reveals that the rescue is very slow and complicated. Unable to contact the tower, Colin says he needs to find a way to reach Heather. Meanwhile, she is still stitching Jenny's leg. When Pete mentions that there were several other goblin sharks in the sea, Brian fears that a second wave might come and raise the water level. He wants to find a way to get to dry land and seek help, but Pete reminds him that those sharks were faster than the jet ski and nothing will escape them. The most they can do now is call for help with the flare gun that is in the cupboard downstairs. Still, there's no way to know which direction the wave took the cupboard. When Barb tries to ask for help over the radio, the response is an automated message stating that California is in a state of emergency. Pete remembers that the beaches were evacuated first, so nobody knows they are there, and it could take a long time for rescue to arrive. Still sobbing, Jenny is inconsolable about how ugly her leg wound looks and says it looks as bad as Frankenstein, vowing never to wear a bikini again. Seeing one of the fins just a few meters from the window, Pete asks Barb to explain more about that species. She says that the goblin shark cannot see, but it can locate its prey through sound waves with no difficulty. Then Brian and Pete begin to distribute harpoons and firearms, trying to organize the group's defense. Barb continues saying that the ideal would be to capture one of them alive, but nobody wants to risk their lives for science. Not even Brian supports her point of view, and she becomes very upset with her fiancé. This theoretical debate gives way to a practical challenge when 2 sharks start to charge at the bottom